It's time for a bit of so-called truth-telling, the oft-quoted term used here in Australia with regards to Aboriginal activism as well as the reconciliation movement. According to Reconciliation Australia, telling the truth about our history not only brings to light colonial conflict and dispossession, but also acknowledges the strength and resilience of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures. Well, here's some truth-telling of my own. The title of this video is Australia Would Have Been Fine Without Aboriginal People. Now, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be controversial. Actually, I'm trying to be factual. I'm trying to be rational. I'm trying to tell the ever-elusive truth. You see, I'm not trying to pick on Aboriginal people here. I could have easily retitled the video, Australia Would Have Been Fine Without People, and my point would be exactly the same. This doesn't just apply to Australia, this could apply to any country in the world. So why did I choose to insert the word Aboriginal? Well, that's what this video is all about. Anybody who has lived in Australia will probably know about these so-called acknowledgements of country. Taking the time to acknowledge country or including a welcome to country at an event reminds us that every day we live, work and dream on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander lands. I'd say that it less reminds people, but rather serves to annoy people. Or perhaps that's just me. For example, on the Woolworths supermarket website, on the front page, they state, "We acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia." Obviously, they're just saying this. They don't actually care about the traditional owners, because if they truly believed that Aboriginal people are the traditional owners, well, they'd give away all their supermarkets, which sit on Aboriginal land, which is all of them. But they don't, because the only thing that really matters to Woolworths is making money, obviously. They're a business after all. But the word I want to focus on is this one, custodian. I don't know if you've noticed, but Indigenous people are always referred to as the custodians of the land. Custodian, a person who has responsibility for taking care of or protecting something. It gives the impression that without Aboriginal people, the land wouldn't be able to look after itself, which I think rationally we all know is just not factual. I'll get to that soon. Here's a few more examples of playing up the custodian role of Indigenous people. As we face a climate crisis, Indigenous environmental activists like Jamie Graham Blair are highlighting how traditional custodians have always protected country. Traditional custodians, Indigenous people or nations who have responsibilities in caring for their country. Australian Human Rights Commission, an acknowledgement of traditional custodianship. I like how at the top they have a scam alert. The point is, here in Australia, and I presume elsewhere, the role of Indigenous people has been romanticised. It's like, without them, Australia would have fallen into disrepair. Well, here's my bit of truth-telling. Aboriginal Australians were never custodians. Aboriginal Australians were survivors. They didn't protect the land. They exploited the land. I'm not even using that in a bad way. Exploit, make full use of and derive benefit from a resource. And I think that's exactly what they did. Australia has a harsh climate. It would have been incredibly difficult to survive in such circumstances, but Aboriginal people did it. They exploited the resources around them to survive. Indigenous people weren't looking after the soil, they were digging the soil to look for things to eat. They didn't protect koalas, they ate koalas. Here's an image of an Australian Aboriginal hunter from the Port Macquarie region in New South Wales. That wallaby, echidna, goanna, snake and koala you see in the photo, they're not sleeping, they're dead. As I said, this isn't custodianship, this is survival, and survival can be pretty harsh. I'm not even criticising this. They did what they had to do to survive on the world's most arid continent, and that took skill. I'm not even taking that away from them. It's funny, we romanticise tribal life like it's something people would want to do. But I don't think anybody would honestly give up their refrigerators and microwaves, plentiful food and hot running water to live like Aboriginal people did 300 years ago, eating insect larvae while they were still alive, except perhaps as some sort of challenge for the amusement of TV viewers. But generally speaking, people like all the mod cons of the modern world and wouldn't voluntarily leave it for a tribal setting. Actually, most modern Australians wouldn't even know how to survive without their supermarket, mobile phone and a Ford Ranger. As I said, Aboriginal people weren't custodians, they were survivors. And that's not a bad thing. Survival is a very important skill, the most important skill. Remember, I titled this video, Australia would have been fine without Aboriginal people. Let's just think about this rationally. Imagine you're lucky enough to own a backyard. Yeah, I know, an increasing number of Australians will never own a backyard, but imagine that you do. What would happen if you weren't there to look after it? Well, the grass would grow long, the bushes would overgrow, trees might sprout from the lawn, the plants would take over, right? Nature is very good at reclaiming habitat. If it wasn't for the human population, our cities would be overgrown and full of wildlife. Australia certainly doesn't need humans. It's perfectly good at looking after itself. As I said, to say that Aboriginal people were custodians who looked after our fragile continent, well, that's just romanticising what actually happened. They lived here and they survived by whatever means necessary. It's not just me making all this up. This is backed up by research. Here's a recent research paper by an interdisciplinary Australian-French research team titled Physiography, Foraging Mobility and the First Peopling of Sahul. Sahul being the name of this landmass from around 65,000 years ago, which you may recognise. It was a paleocontinent that encompassed the modern-day landmasses of mainland Australia, Tasmania and New Guinea. It looks this way because the sea level was around 85 metres lower than it is today. When Aboriginal people came, the sea level rapidly started to rise, probably from all those fires they were burning. I'm joking, people. But seriously, many of their campsites were gradually inundated as the sea level increased between 80 and 120 metres to where it is today. But when Aboriginal people first arrived, they were met with an Australia that was teeming with life. It was bigger, greener and full of giant iguanas, kangaroos and koalas. Noting that around 45,000 years ago, research suggests that humans caused the extinction of Australia's prehistoric giant animals. I wasn't here then, so you can't blame me. My point is, Australia was doing perfectly well before humans arrived. It didn't need custodianship, so let's stop pretending otherwise. Aboriginal people weren't custodians, they were migrants who managed to survive by exploiting Australia's natural resources. Just like you and me.